Welcome to FCPS All-Stars. Our guest for today is Charlie Zachmann, culinary arts teacher at Frederick High School. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I'm very glad to have you today. Now, I do have to ask, what exactly do you teach as a culinary arts teacher?
My program is essentially a smaller version of the CTC culinary arts class.
Okay.
And so basically it's a three-part program, and it's the science behind cooking, and cooking through the lens of working in a restaurant. So most family consumer science classes are more based on home cooking, and culinary arts is based on restaurant cooking. And
Okay.
so it's called Commercial Foods, and in Commercial Foods 1 is where kids learn to cook. They learn measurement, they learn baking, they learn safety and sanitation, they learn the principles of cooking, like how food cooks and the science behind it, the conduction, convection, radiation, all that kind of stuff. And then Commercial Foods 2, we do caterings, we do a lot of lunches and other things for the school.
Wow.
And then in Commercial Foods 3 is actually an internship where students are allowed to go out and get a job working in a local restaurant like downtown on Market Street, and they can gain credit for real work, real experience that they can put on a resume and either go to school or get a better job.
I had no idea that we offered all of that within a school within FCPS.
Frederick High is the only one.
That's amazing. Now, you're teaching students. When did you become interested in cooking?
Well, if you ask my family, I became interested in cooking when I was 5 years old because I was obsessed with the Swedish Chef and the Muppet Show. But I really didn't get into it until high school. Like, I always liked to cook, and I went through high school and I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I wasn't very focused, and I took a culinary arts class by chance, more like the CTC version.
Okay.
And so my senior year, it was probably about this time of year, winter, and the chef teacher he said to me, he goes, so what are you going to go to college for? Or where are you going to go to college? I'm like, I have no idea what I'm going to do. And he goes, why don't you cook? And it was just like, why don't I cook? Like, it was completely like someone just needed to say it.
So what else do you and the Swedish chef from the Muppet Show have in common?
Ironically enough, and I did not know this at the time, that and this is hearsay, is that that Jim Henson, when he modeled the Swedish Chef, actually modeled it after Chef Tell, who was not local, he was a cooking star. So in the late 70s, early 80s, when Julia Child was big and Yang Kang Cook, there was also Chef Tell, who was bigger outside of Philly. And so big 6'5" German man who you couldn't understand, big mustache, and so supposedly Jim Henson modeled the Swedish Chef after him. And so I worked for Chef Tell. I did my externship from college, and so I worked for him for 3 months, and cooking German food, and so yeah, I worked for the guy that I wanted to be when I was young.
How did you orchestrate that, though? I mean, it's one thing to watch somebody on the Muppet Show, and it's another thing to actually work for the person who you've always wanted to be like.
Yeah, and like I said, I didn't know it at the time, but he was in the area, and because we lived so close to his 2 restaurants, or 2 of 3 restaurants, that I knew of him, but I didn't know that I could work for him. And so when I went to college, there was a guy who I knew who did his externship for him the year before, and he said, "Oh yeah, just tell him that you know me, and it'll be fine." And I didn't even know him that well, and so I walked in there, and expected, like, I'm not going to be able to work for this guy, and expected to be like kind of shut down. And so I walked in and I said, I'd like to do my externship here. And he goes, okay, when can you start? And that was essentially the entire conversation. And so, yeah, it was really like, sometimes all it takes is asking.
Now, he's German, and I understand that you also have other German influences.
I do, and so my mother is from Germany. She came over when she was 8, and my great-grandfather came over when I don't know how old he was, but he came over, and he was a pastry chef, as well as my great-grandfather, who was also a pastry chef. So great-grandfather, grandfather, and then me.
That's amazing that there are some careers that actually do run in generations and interests.
And it's funny because I didn't really know either of them, but it's interesting to know, like, you see pictures and you know, like, oh, you have attributes of this family member or whatever, and you don't really know them. It's like, but you have similar interests as well, which is always really nice.
I understand that you share something else special with your great-grandfather that was really debatable amongst your family members.
Yes, and so it turns out, and this is also, you know, legend, is that he didn't show it to everyone, but supposedly he had a tattoo of a pretzel because he was a pastry chef. And so he showed it to my father when my father was young. And it was something that I wanted to incorporate, or I wanted for a long time, because it seemed like a symbol of my family more than like words or anything. And so yes, I have a chef knife tattooed on my forearm, and in the chef knife is the pretzel.
Okay. Now, most people don't just have a tattoo on one arm. Usually, if you have one, you have to have a set.
Yeah, and so I thought having just a chef knife would be a little weird, like, especially, like, I mean, if you know me, you know that I'm a chef, and so it makes perfect sense. But out of context, it might be a little weird.
A knife on your arm might be a little weird.
Yeah, especially because it had a pretzel on it. And
in school with kids.
Yes, and so I have tongs on the other arm because, like, half of my day, like, once when I was a line cook, and even as a sous chef, I would spend a lot of my day on the line. And so I worked a lot on the grill or saute, and so a lot of times you have to fan out meat. And when you do it, you know, you're working with tongs in one hand and a knife in the other. And so it really just represents, like, who, not even just who I am, but or who I was, but who I am, because I worked in the field for working in different restaurants for about 9 years before I transitioned to teaching.
Speaking of a transition, with your skills and your background, how in the world did FCPS become fortunate enough to recruit you as a teacher?
My wonderful wife, who was my girlfriend at the time. And so I was dating this girl who was going to Kutztown University to be an art teacher. And so I always joked, even my Chef Peabody, my high school culinary chef, I told him, I'm like, you know, I'm gonna come back someday and take your job. And it was more like a joke. And so Colleen, my wife, when she was going through school, you know, at the end of becoming a teacher, you go to teacher job fairs. And so, you know, we were in New Jersey where I lived, and she lives across the border in Pennsylvania. And she goes, so there's a teacher job fair in Atlantic City. Do you want to go? You know, we can redo your resume. I'm like, no one's going to hire me. You know, I'm like, I have no teaching experience. I'm not a teacher. But really, when you think about it, that's what I do. Like, you're constantly teaching people on the job. Like, over half of the people that work in restaurants don't have any formal training of working in a restaurant. And so you really are a teacher. And so I went down there and I was, you know, going to all the booths and everything and just not having much luck. And then I came up to the FCPS booth, and Sonora Nil Wilbar, she goes, so what do you teach? And I'm like, you know, this is who you want. She's an art teacher. She's great, blah, blah. I'm just, you know, I'm a chef. I'm like, you probably don't have anything. And she goes, actually, we need a culinary arts teacher. And I'm like, where do I sign up? And so I literally got hired before my wife did. Like, who was going, like, she's great. She's amazing. And she and so, yeah.
Do you and Colleen have any children?
We do. We have one son, and he is 3 years old, and he is a pistol, and his name is Oliver.
Oliver. And you say he's a pistol. I've heard that he's quite a character, and that is a pun intended.
Yes, yes. He's very into music, and before Oliver was born, I decided that I needed not the whole set, but a good portion of the Muppet Show, you know, on DVD, and so we very quickly discovered that together. Not that I pushed it on him at all. And so he really gravitated toward the music. And so he loves the Elton John episode. And so for Halloween, he asked very specifically, I want to be Elton John from Crocodile Rock Muppet Show. And, and that's all that it took. And so then, you know, and for a while it was a little dicey because he kept going between that and a skeleton. But yeah, he got a lot of compliments, and a lot of, like, people were asking us on Facebook if they could, like, repost it. Like, can I repost your son? And I'm like, yeah, go right ahead.
Well, it sounds like Oliver really enjoys the limelight. So when you worked for Chef Tell, were you ever able to go on TV with him on one of his shows?
One day, I came in and he asked me to prep up all this food, and it wasn't on the menu. And so I'm like, okay. And so I prep all this food up, And then the next day I come in and I'm like, where's Chef? And they're like, oh, he's on Regis and Kathy Lee today. And I'm like, he's going to Regis and Kathy Lee? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, with all that food I prepped? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, who'd he take with him? And they're like, he's taking the dishwasher. And I was so angry. I'm like, even if I wasn't on camera, you know, like just to be, like go to New York City and go to Regis and Kathy Lee.
Yes.
And so, you know, it was kind of painful because Chef Tell had a TV in his kitchen. Because, you know, as a chef, you know, you're kind of just overseeing a lot. And so he liked to watch TV while he cooked or oversaw. And so we watched my food on TV while I cooked.
While you were watching
yeah,
dishes,
so my food
probably.
has been on TV. My food has been on TV. And I have been for a moment.
Okay. So no other opportunities for 15 seconds of chef fame?
So, well, food aside is, my wife and I played roller derby. And so I played for the Baltimore men's team, which is now known as Harm City Havoc. And my wife played for the DC Roller Girls. And so I also reffed in the area, because they always need refs. And so I was reffing for the Charm City Roller Girls. And so it just happened that the show Ace of Cakes, which is Charm City Cakes, which was on the Food Network, they were doing a TV show there that day. And so they made a cake for the Charm City Roller Girls. And so, like, I was on an episode, like, you see me skating away, like the number 9 on my back, and you see, like, and I'm like, I'm on TV. And so I called my parents, and I was so excited. I'm like, I'm on the Food Network, I'm on the Food Network. And they're like, what are you cooking? And I'm like, I was reffing roller derby. And so they're like, so you're not even cooking? I'm like, no, not yet.
So you're on your food made it to a cooking show.
Yes.
And then you made it on a cooking show.
Yes.
Roller skating.
Yes, like reffing roller skating, and you don't even know it's me. So you see my wife in the audience when they pan the audience, and then you see like a big tall guy with a number 9 on his back with a referee jersey skating away, and that is me. And no one would ever know that it was me.
So if I ever have my own cooking show one day, I would love to have you as my guest.
Well,
in this episode of Hale's Kitchen, Chef Tiana Hale gets to take a well-deserved break, and she is being helped out in the kitchen today by her friend, the infamous Charlie Zachmann.
And so today we're going to make shrimp ceviche. And so really easy, you don't even need any kind of cooking apparatus. All that you need is some fresh shrimp, and most people think that buying fresh shrimp is you buy them out of the case and they're already thawed, when realistically all you need to do is you buy them frozen, because they freeze them right on the boat, which means that when you thaw them out, they are the freshest that they could possibly be right then.
I had no idea.
And so all that we have is some 3140s, which are 31 to 40 per pound. And they're from Belize, which is very good at doing aqua farming. And so they're fresh and they're nice. And so all that we need to do is cook them. And I love this recipe for 2 reasons. One, it's one of my students' recipes from El Salvador.
Okay.
And 2, it shows my students the real science behind cooking. So everyone associates with cooking meat with just like putting it on fire or putting it in the oven.
That's usually what we think of.
When really all that it is the coagulation of proteins, and there's lots of ways to do that. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna coagulate these proteins today with some lime juice. We're gonna use some acid, put it directly on it. It's gonna take a little bit of time, but if you time it right, it's not gonna over or undercook it. So you know, sometimes when you eat that shrimp and it's a little bit chewy, it will be perfectly cooked every time. And so what I have is I cut these 3140s up, and if you look at them, see if I can dig one out here. They're not really huge, they're about that size.
Okay.
And so you don't want to, since we're cutting them up, you don't want to buy them too large. And you also don't want to get the ones that are too small, because you find that the nicest, freshest ones are somewhere around 3140 or bigger. And so the lower the number, the bigger the shrimp. So if it's like a 2130, that's a larger shrimp, or a U10 is 10 shrimp or under per pound.
Okay.
And so these are perfect for what we're doing. And
So let me ask you something really quickly.
sure.
Do you always find out where your food came from? You said these were from Belize.
I actually, when it comes to seafood, I always do find out where my seafood comes from. If
Okay.
you look at the little tag, it tells you where it came from, if it was farmed, or if it was, or what ocean it came from.
Okay.
And there's actually some apps out there, some free apps from what's the word I'm looking for? Some aquariums. There's a couple aquariums. Monterey, I believe, is the name of the aquarium, that they have all the seafood that you could ever want, what to look for, what not to look for, what to avoid, because some things are not fished in a way that is sustainable, and that's all about what we're trying to do.
Makes sense.
And so first thing I need you to do is I'm going to cut up these limes for you, and if you would squeeze them into there. I already have a couple started for you.
Okay.
There's 2 halves
Anything
right there.
special I need to do?
Just get as much juice out of them as you can. And while you do that, I'm going to start getting the other ingredients together. And so what I have here is I have 1 pound of shrimp, which is when you go to the store and you buy a bag, it's about a half a bag. So you could easily double this if you wanted to do like appetizers for the whole family, or like for the holidays. And the nice thing is you can do this 24 hours in advance. And I know, like on holidays when you're entertaining, what you want to do is you want to entertain. You don't want to be just stuck in the kitchen the whole time. So
That's right.
all you have to do is like mix this up the day ahead, and then you'll see once we pull it out, like how easy it is really to plate it, and you look like a superstar.
Okay, I do have to say though, it sounds a little weird cooking with lime juice. I've heard cooking with gas. I've heard cooking with a lot of things.
It is a little weird, but I mean that's how we do things, you know.
All right.
And so what I have here is I have a half of a red onion, and then all that I'm going to do is everyone. The first thing that they want to do is they want to go in and they peel it. Easiest thing to do is if you look, the bottom is the core and the top is the top of the onion. We're just going to take a little sliver off the top of the onion and just peel from the corner, and that'll make it go really fast and really easy.
Wow.
And then I'm just going to do a julienne, and a julienne is just a matchstick shaped item. And then so I'm just going to keep my fingers back, and then when you cut,
Yes, we don't want any extra protein. Okay.
when you cut, most people want to cut like like parallel to the edge of the board, and realistically, our bodies don't want to do that because you bring your hand way out and you wind up like bringing your thumb out and cut yourself. So I'm going to have my knife point off that way, and my food go that way. So your hands almost make a natural V.
Okay.
And then so all I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the tip of the knife, and I'm just going to push through.
And sharp knives are important.
Sharp knives are very important, and people think that a dull knife is safer, when realistically a dull knife you need to put more force behind it, and when you put more force behind a knife and it's not cutting particularly straight, that's when it slips and you cut yourself. So
So get rid of those dull knives.
exactly. Knife sharpeners are actually not that expensive, and it's really easy. A couple swipes on a knife sharpener and it's a whole new world. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut these in half to make them a little bit smaller, because even though we are cooking these two, technically they're kind of cooking in the lime juice. No one really wants a mouthful of onion. And so we're just going to cut them up a little bit smaller.
Okay.
And so what we're going to do is if you want to pour the lime juice on it, I will add my
Any special techniques?
No,
like a
no,
splash?
just pour it right on top.
All
You
right.
can add some flair if you want to add some flair.
There we go. That was enough.
And then what we're going to do is we're going to add about a half a tablespoon of salt.
Any special kind of salt? It looks a little coarse.
It is. I like to use kosher salt, and a lot of chefs do, and kosher salt adds a nice roundness. Like a lot of times table salt or iodized salt will make things taste more salty than they do bring out natural flavors. And all that we're trying to do is bring the flavors that are already there to the forefront.
Okay.
And then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take some fresh cilantro that I already picked and washed, and actually I'm going to go a little bit less than that.
Okay.
And it's bunches come in different sizes, big and small, and so if it's a small bunch, you're going to use about half. If it's a large bunch, you use about a quarter of it.
Okay.
And so with this technique, I'm just going to bunch it all together, and this is kind of like what the French would call a chiffonade, or a modified chiffonade, where you just roll up your herbs and then...
Chiffonade. You are chiffonading on my show.
Exactly.
Love it.
Exactly. And we're just going to cut through once. And a lot of people, when they cut herbs, a big mistake is is they think mincing, and they put their hand on top of the knife and they're just going back and forth really quick, and all that they're doing is, especially with a dull knife, is they're just pounding on the herbs and it's just bruising them. When really what you want to do is start at the front of the knife and just kind of push through. And even if it's really fast, the knife is still slicing forward rather than just pounding down on top of it. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back through it once more. And with something like this, it doesn't need to be perfectly, microscopic, teeny tiny. You can make it a little bit larger, and it looks kind of nice. Like sometimes a nice rough cut is okay.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you this, because this smells wonderful, and for those of you who can't smell it now, just scratch your screen.
Don't have smell-o-vision?
No, I'm sorry, it won't work. But can they use dried herbs, or is that a no-no for this particular dish?
With something like this that is so fresh and it tastes so fresh, realistically, it's like wintertime right now, but this is going to have like the flavors of spring.
It does.
And so you really want to use fresh herbs. And I've had other ceviches that are had like, those other fresh herbs that make things taste like spring, like mint, or it just really makes it pop.
Okay.
Like right now, like most people are considering, using like heavier herbs, like things that you would associate with winter, like rosemary or sage. Not really appropriate for this kind of dish, but
it's too heavy.
Yeah, way too heavy. But like for like a roasted piece of meat, that's exactly what you should be reaching for. Okay, so if you want to stir that up, and I'll get rid of these, we'll.
It smells wonderful.
Thank you.
So am I cooking?
You are, technically, yes, you are cooking. And if you notice.
The shrimp are changing color.
Yeah, they are. And so that's perfect. So shrimp are colored by what they eat. So they lack this oxygen-carrying protein called myoglobin. And so when they eat whatever they eat out in the ocean, it colors their meat a certain color. So these were a little bit grayish. But most crustaceans, when you cook them, they turn orange.
Right.
And so, like sometimes you buy pink shrimp or brown shrimp or gray shrimp or like whatever. It's wherever they're from, whatever they're eating. But realistically, when you cook them, they're all going to turn orange. And so it's already starting to work. It's already starting to turn orange. And then what we can do is, what I like to do is, rather than letting it sit in a bowl, because some of the shrimp are going to sit out of the liquid and they're not going to cook as well, we're going to put it in a Ziploc bag, which isn't like. It's not really designer. No one really.
It's not really French.
No, it's not really French. But what it does is it's going to give you the most contact per liquid per shrimp, and so that is it's going to give us the most liquid touching shrimp, and that's going to make it cook better, more evenly, and make sure that all the shrimp is properly cooked. Okay. So do you want to hold or do you want to pour?
I will hold and leave the spilling to you.
Thank you very much. So all that we're going to do is, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pour most of the liquid. And then I'm just going to use my rubber spatula.
It smells really good.
Thank you. Another thing I like to do is whenever you're pouring a liquid into something else, you always pour towards the other side. So if you're pouring over just the edge here, a lot of times someone will just like roll down. Right. Just make sure you're pouring to the back edge, and it will always work out a lot better. Like especially tomato sauce, like things that are like
on your white jacket.
Exactly, on my white jacket. Just not necessarily very nice. So what we're going to do is we're going to
squeeze the air out.
Yeah, squeeze as much air out as possible. That'll give us the most contact. And then you just pop that thing in the refrigerator for about 24 hours, and you're going to come back and they're all going to be beautifully orange and red. And so what's going to happen is the red onion does two things. Is one, it gives you some eye appeal just because it's red. Mm-hmm. And two, a little bit of it is going to actually bleed into the liquid, and it's going to give it this nice red color. And here, let me show you what it looks like. This is what it looks like. So
bang, there it is.
Yeah, so you can see how all of our shrimp is fully cooked, and I made this one last night, and so it's been sitting just less than 24 hours, but I tasted it right before we came on, and it's pretty perfect. And so as you see, the cilantro, like some people like to add herbs at the very end, just because a lot of times that great pop of herb flavor kind of goes away. This one's still good. Like as you can see, when herbs and things that are green that have chlorophyll in them, they get overcooked, they start turning army green. These still have a lot of pop left. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, before we start plating, I'm just going to cut up a little avocado, and probably one is best. and like you.
So what's the best way?
Okay, my goal is always to show students how not to cut towards themselves. I have found every way to cut everything I've ever cut not towards yourself, except for avocados. And I have seen, which is why in my class I don't let students take the seeds out of avocados. And so, I mean, this way you can cut away from yourself. So what I like to do is I just take, there we go, just take the top off, and then I call this putting it in the tunnel. So you put the avocado in the tunnel, and then you just roll it around, which everybody is used to doing, and then you
squeeze.
Unlock it. And now this is where, I mean, if you have a really sharp knife, you can put it in the tunnel and you can slice into it like that, which is probably the best way, and then turn it.
Twist it.
And then when you take it off, like everybody wants to reach into the bottom of the knife, and that's another way they get cut. What you can do is you can just reach on the back, pop it off. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my spoon. Now I could cut it in the shell or in the skin, but if you do it like this, you can always just fan it out with your knife.
And they're a little slimy.
They are a little bit. I mean, they're very high in fat, but it's a good fat. So what we'll do now is we're going to use our glasses. And so I wanted to use, I had martini glasses out, and so my wife saw that and she goes, "Really, what is this, the 80s?" And she's correct. It's a little passé, and we're past the 80s and should not be using martini glasses anymore. So we'll use margarita glasses. And so all I'm going to do is I'm going to fan out my a couple pieces of avocado, and I'm going to actually let me do it the other way. There we go. Just going to put them in here.
Okay.
And then we're just going to take a little bit of our cooked ceviche. We're going to just take a little bit, and I'm going to try and get as much of the liquid out as possible, because as much work as that lime juice did, no one wants a mouthful of just lime juice.
Okay.
And so I'm just going to
Unless you have the other things that go in margarita glasses.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. I mean, so we're just going to take a little bit, and you don't need a lot with this, which is really nice. It's just a nice kind of starter, a nice fresh salad.
It's very pretty.
So.
And do we do chips as well?
Oh yes. So now you can use any chips that you want. And so what I got is I have some pita chips. But
Love pita chips.
I love pita chips too. And for this, you could use tortilla chips because that would be, ethnically correct.
Correct.
And you can also use fried wontons, which is also really nice. You just buy wonton skins. You can buy like 70 of them for like $2 at the grocery store. And if you even wanted to, you can just like fan them out like on the sides. Just put a couple in there. And then it makes it look really nice.
Ooh.
And so, I mean, realistically, you don't even need the fork if you have the pita chip, because you can just kind of scoop and eat.
Well, I'm prone to dropping things on myself, so I'm going to stick with the fork.
I have this bright white coat that I'm going to get dirty if I don't use a fork, so cheers.
Cheers. Oops. I'll grab a piece here. All right.
Excellent.
It's good and zesty, and
I'm
it's
very
good.
happy.
We are so fortunate to have Charlie Zachmann with us today as our chef. And if you'd like the recipe, stay tuned to the end of this broadcast and we will post the recipe, or you can request it at FCPS at fcps.org. Thank you and shine on.